Would you like to start?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, this takes us back quite a few years.
Heat.
Just before your mother died, she and I talked about her dying. And what would I do? And I said, well, no, my love is with you. She said, very quietly, she says, no. She says, you'll remarry. Just like that, that's all she said. Well, after she died, I went through a period of pretty depressing times. And not much thought given to the matter of finding another companion. But along about 02, 03, I thought that I might try to do something about that. I didn't feel comfortable being without a companion. So I decided to get involved with the church programs. And I was pretty active in the single adults activities there in Raleigh Stake for about 2.5 years. During that time I dated, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 sisters in the area. Most of them were considerably younger than I was. Most of them were divorced. Most of them had careers and families still to deal with. And with those considerations, nothing really clicked in terms of finding a companion. Well, I don't want that to happen. And so, long about December of 2003, having, at least the way I felt, not much of a prospect in the immediate area, I decided to try the LDS Singles internet page and see what that would bring. So I dutifully put on a resume and some of the things that I was wanting and looking for. And that went along for about a month and a half. And in that time I got a half a dozen responses. And then a statement showed up on the internet. What were you using for a pseudonym that day?
I don't remember.
I don't remember either. But it was Judy. She didn't say 3 times late, but that's usually her sign off. But her resume showed up, I liked it
Good
particularly.
job, application.
That's right.
I responded to it, and I liked what she said, because she said a couple of things that meant something to me. She said, one, she was sorry that she didn't live close to the temple where she lived, so she could go more often. She said, two, she felt that her big contribution in life was raising 3 sons who were making a contribution in life, being useful, and finally she mentioned just briefly her conversion and how that came about. I liked all of that. But she was using a pseudonym and I was using one, so I didn't know where she lived, what her real name was, and I guess she didn't either. But me being super sleuth, it didn't take long to find out. And one day I called her up and called her Sister Smith, and she said, "How do you know that?" And I said, "Oh, I just ran it down." And it was just kind of a process of elimination.
Mm-hmm.
So finally I got down to Smith, Judy Smith, living out in Great Bridge. We got it narrowed down pretty quickly. And so we started talking with each other, sometimes late into the night. Sometimes late into the night, and she'd tell me about the kind of day she had, and my goodness, they were busy. Top it off, not only was she taking care of herself, but she had her mother in the area and required some attention. And she spent some time there. And I guess about 2 months after all that, one night, after I'd finished a conversation with Judy, I sat back and reflected on what was said, how it was said, and what was meant by what was said. And I had distinctly come into my head a little voice that said, "If not this dear woman, who?" And that was my answer. I knew she was for me. And so we decided to see each other. And that was along about May.
January.
What's that?
January.
January we saw each other?
End of January.
In person?
Yes.
Well, what it was that they were having a baptism at church in which her son was involved with a young woman. and reached acquainted her with the church, and she wanted to go to it, and so I thought, well, that'd be okay. So I came up, and had a very difficult time finding where she lived. I drove across the viaduct to
Newport News.
Newport News twice before I turned the other way to get to Great Bridge. By that time, I was running late. And this is a lady who doesn't like to be late. She said she had one criteria when she first met people that gave her a clue as to what they were like. And that criteria was, how did their fingernails look? And I knew my fingernails were clean that night, but my timing was way off. And she was a little bit flustered because she wanted to be there on time. Didn't think we could make it. We did, but it took some doing to it. So we went to the baptism, and afterwards I decided to take her out to dinner. But we decided to go to, go to Corral, that's what we decided to go to. And it wasn't very conducive to some quiet talk. And having done that, we said goodnight. I went one way and she went another way. And we both had time to think about what that meeting meant. I still liked her. I really did. I don't know what she thought of me.
Not much.
I can believe it. But through a number of further meetings, we got to know each other pretty well. Maybe half a dozen. She was kind enough, for instance, to come down when I had an operation done on my thumb to be with me. And she was very nice about that. But we got talking. She said when we first started talking, she said, I'm concerned about the care of my mother, and I want to be near her, so I can do that. And she says, what do you think about that? I thought about it for a minute or two, and said, that's fine by me. I can move to Portsmouth. You don't have to move anywhere. And so things got off to a pretty good start that way. And from then on, we just worked on putting a wedding together and putting our households together. She almost left me when that happened.
Was there too much stuff, or just different stuff?
Just my usual mode. She's a very neat person. Everything's orderly. Everything's in its place. And she knows where to find it. You can't always say that. In fact, you can't ever say that. And as a result, we had found a place to live up here in Portsmouth, and had given some thought as to what we were going to bring from each of our households to that place. And she was kind enough to come down and help me pack, since there wasn't anything done before that time. She helped me pack, bless her heart.
Bless her heart.
You can say that again.
Yeah.
And like I said, she almost turned around and walked out. She saw piles of stuff around. And then to top it all off, when we finally did get married and decided to move in together, she had to move her stuff about 10 miles to get into the other house. Mine had to come 200 miles, and I hired a company to, actually we hired Jason, didn't we?
No.
Hmm?
No. You hired that black guy.
Oh, the black guy. Oh, that's right.
Oh, yeah, the black guy.
Well,
They
yeah.
gave him the best price.
Uh-huh. Lowest bidder.
Right. You know the rest.
And so she left me the day the movers came, and movers got me packed up, and I helped clean up and what have you. And she came up here, and she had the assignment of receiving everything and putting it somewhere. And she about left me then too. She said, "What's this guy getting me into?"
Do you really
I'm
need
glad she
this?
stayed. I'm glad she stayed. And been that way ever since. We made a few improvements on the little house and moved in. Put an addition on it, a new bedroom. We did the bathrooms. But then we decided that it wasn't sufficient enough for us. We had dear David come out this way to see us. I guess that's what he was out here for. And we couldn't get his family even in the front room, the house we were in, let alone provide them any place to lodge or have something to eat.
You had to stand up to eat.
Mm.
Stand up to visit.
Yeah.
So we decided to get something a little bigger. And here we are. In between, we had some nice experiences. We had a 1.5 year service at the temple together, which was good. An enjoyable experience. We've had 3 years of out of service. Not so good. Keeping me well. This dear lady has brought me back from death at least 3 times, maybe 4. Once she drove all the way from Washington by herself. twice in this house. As a result of being having diarrhea and other illnesses, having passed out entirely, she took care of the situation twice.
Well, it was a case to get you to the hospital in case you died, somebody would be there besides me.
Mm.
Yeah.
Now, Judy, there was Dad's painted it as if it's been a a challenge for you to marry him, but I know that there were some good things, some reasons. Why don't you share with us some of the thoughts that you had as you were making your decision?
The decision of marrying?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I have to thank my son Jason for making me take a second look. Because he met Charles at the baptism the first night that we actually saw each other. And he was living with me at the time. My son was.
Yeah.
And when I got back home that night from going out to dinner with Charles, he said, well, that was lovely, wasn't it? And I said, it was okay. He said, I am so ashamed of you. And I said, I was really taken aback. And I said, why? What have I done? He said, the man came off different than he really is. He didn't look like what you expected. He didn't seem like what you expected. I said, that's true. He said, but let me tell you, he's the most righteous man I've ever been around. You can feel it when he walks into the room. And I can't believe that you're willing to let go of that just because he didn't seem like what you had built him up to be. And I kind of puffed and blustered and denied it, and then I thought, he's right. And I never thought of myself as a shallow person, but my son just pointed out to me quite clearly that I was. And he said, you're going to email him, you got to do something. Because he knew that he and I had emailed each other every night, pages and pages of emails that we were sending back and forth to each other. Plus we were talking about 2 hours a day on the phone. And he said, what are you going to do? And I said, I need to get in touch with him, but I'm not sure what to say or how to say it. He said, well, you know, if you don't say something, he's going to take that as a total rejection, and you don't want that, and I didn't. And so I thought about what I was going to say, and I finally decided to say, we both have to agree that tonight was not what we thought it would be.
Mm-hmm.
But please don't let us ruin the possibility of a great friendship and possibly more just because we got off to a bad start. That's probably the smartest thing I've ever said in my entire life. So that was the end of January, and we didn't see each other again for about 3 weeks. He came up on a Saturday, and we did some sightseeing stuff, and went aboard the Wisconsin? You wait. What was the ship that we went aboard? The Wisconsin? Down at the waterfront.
Okay.
And we just had the grandest time. Well, I had the grandest time. I think he did. I'm not sure. And he asked me to marry him that day.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
second time you saw him.
The second time I saw him. And that was in February. And I said yes.
Wow.
But I was ready to go ahead and get married because it's not like we were 25.
Right.
You know, you kind of know what you want and know what you expect. and what you're gonna put up with and what you're not gonna put up with. You know,
Right.
it's not like you're 25 and you've got all the time in the world. And so I knew we wouldn't be married in the temple because he had already been sealed to your mom and I had been sealed to my first husband. And so therefore, with that in mind, I just wanted to get married by the bishop in his office and just have a witness come up, you know, maybe Barb and Glenn come up and witness it, or somebody off the street, or I didn't care, just wanted to get married.
Right.
And he wanted the whole 9 yards, and it really just drug his feet. And then he threw in an operation, and then he, you know, it was just like dragging his feet. I think after he made the initial, will you marry me, on the spur of the moment, he decided, what have I done? And let me buy some time here and think about this. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Because he didn't know me. I didn't, you know, we didn't really know each other.
But you've been writing,
We've been
and you
writing
knew
a
each
lot.
other very well from your letters, your emails.
Yeah, probably.
Mm.
And it just felt like when we were together, we'd always known each other. It was never the
Now, who are you
new
again?
relationship jitters
Right.
until after you ask her to marry you, you know, then you made this big jump and then you think, oh my gosh, what have I done? But he was so different from anybody I'd ever known or been married to, because, you know, Charles is my third husband.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
And I'm, in spite of the difficulties, and the difficulties that I found were different than the ones that he found me to be harder to live with than your mother was, because obviously we're very different people. He found me to be bossy, controlling. Anything else I can throw in there? Impatient, very impatient.
Loving, tender,
That's him,
compassionate.
that's him. But when things have to be done, and I see that it has to be done, I just do it, and I'm not a procrastinator,
Right.
and he is. And it was really hard because I had been single for like 11 years. And it was difficult
To adapt.
to adapt
Yeah.
because he was, not only was he new and different, he didn't do things and he didn't do anything in a timely manner to my way of thinking.
Right.
Now the fact that it might not have mattered, didn't matter.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't what I was used to. And then when I would find out little things like, I'd be packing up stuff up on this end of the relationship and boxing stuff up and giving it away, or passing it on to one of the kids or something, and I'd say, well, I packed 6 boxes today, what did you do? Well, I got some packing done too. He was downloading computer files. He had, so when after we got married and we went to North Carolina
To
for our honeymoon,
evaluate the.
I'm walking in the apartment thinking there's gonna be boxes stacked in the hallway and everywhere. Nothing. Nothing. And I was so mad, I just about turned around and walked out. Because I knew how hard I had been working
Right.
and what I still had to do on the other end. And he hadn't arranged for a mover, nothing. He had done zip. And I think truly that he was so overwhelmed by it
Mm.
that he didn't know where to start.
Could be.
I think now that's not what I thought then.
Right.
So, and then we not only got it packed out, and they came in and put our stuff in the truck, I had to meet them up here at the new house so they would have a place to deliver it. And that new house was so small because his apartment had more square footage than the new house. My condominium had more square footage than the new house.
So merging the two together was a
Mission impossible.
yeah, jigsaw puzzle.
It was just ghastly. And our garage, we had a, I don't think he ever went out in the garage after we got stuff moved in. The garage was stacked up so high that you had to have pathways through the boxes because there was no place to put anything. You just stacked the boxes, and they stayed there the whole time we were there. Now I'll tell
Until
you,
you came here.
until we came here. But I would go out in the garage on the days before the night before the trash would go out, unbeknownst to him, and I would throw out at least a box of stuff, put it out on the street. He never knew the difference. He still doesn't know.
Well, that's that'll be our little secret, I guess.
Well, now he hasn't missed it. He never hadn't used it. It had been packed up after your mom died, and he moved to North Carolina.
Right.
Well, if he hadn't unpacked it in 5 years, I don't figure he needed it.
Right.
So, and I did the same thing with stuff of mine, but it was just a really hard
Transition.
transition. It was.
Well, we thank you for working through that transition and coming to the point where you are now. Appreciate
It's easier now because we have, well, it's amazing what just having more room does to you.
right,
You've lived in cramped quarters before.
right,
It's always easier to do, it's hard to do with less of anything. Some things are harder than others, but when it's everything, when it's space and time and help and money, well, money was not a problem. I can't believe he's actually sleeping.
I guess it's nap time.
He said what he wanted to say, and now he's gone to sleep. But when you've got it, one or the other of these things would be difficult enough. But when you're dealing with all of them at the same time, and you feel like you're doing it by yourself, it's really, it's hard.
Right, right.
Does this get edited?
Yeah, you can edit this whole last part. Take it all out.
Maybe we'll do a little sign off and
Anything-
say thank you for some
Anything
time
that doesn't
today.
sound positive, take it out.
There you go.
But
There was a driver's compartment in front. There was space there for 2 people. And they were covered, but those that rode in the rumble seats kind of had the wind blow in their faces. And my brother and I thought that was grand sport, driving along in that car on our way to wherever with a hair blowing in our face and just having a good old time.
Well, fun. And
Okay.
how many brothers?
After I was born, there were 4 other brothers that were born into the family. I had my brother Richard, who was my buddy through most of my school years. We did a lot of things together.
Still keeping regular contact here, right?
Well, yes, I guess you could call it that. We see them about 2 or 3, 4 times a year.
let me do it, please.
And, but, yeah, my brothers, be careful with my glasses.
Yeah, let's put them right here.
Um,
There we go.
It may not work.
There are 2 or 3 incidents in my early life that my mother tells about, but which I don't remember. But there is a couple pieces that I do remember. We lived down in what was called the not Hollywood, but
Sugar House, or not that far?
no, we were in Sugar House. That's what it was called.
Okay.
Still, Sugar House was named, of course, because there was an effort at one time, the Mormon pioneers who settled in that area to establish a sugar mill, but it was never fully profitable. But it did become a business area, and we lived just off the main area of Sugar House, and went to church at the steak center, one of the big steak centers in Salt Lake. It was called Granite Tabernacle. And that building is still standing down on 9th South and 21st Street. 9th South, no, 21st South and 9th East. That's what that
There we
is.
go.
But I do remember going to church
Tracy,
there.
do you want to watch other
Big
water?
building.
Funny one.
Huge
What is
building.
it?
Steak center, big
Come see what it is.
big place.
It's really funny.
Yeah.
These two
The
guys.
other thing I remember was my
We had it
first year of school,
Come on, look.
which was just across the street from the church.
It's a mammal, so.
But I found kindergarten was a lot of fun.
See, you want to see this little
I remember most about kindergarten was that we had a big block
It's a captain wheel.
bin with wheels on it.
His name.
And you could load this thing up with blocks. And
Daddy,
you
you
could
want to see
take the box to
Eldorado?
another part,
You want to see Eldorado?
You wanna see all
take the box to another part
Okay, Trisha, come on.
of the room, unload them and build something with them there, and then use the box as the trolley to bring people to the new city that we just built.
Nice. Fun. Sounds like something our kids would do.
I remember that so vividly. That kindergarten class was really a lot of fun.
That's
And it
good.
was only 3 blocks from home, so I didn't have very far to go at all.
Well, nice.
But
I mean,
that was one of the major activities we had.
okay.